women aren't into self-examination and don't run to the doctor when they have the pain.
Right.
And there are a lot of reasons for it. I'm not being critical of the person suffering.
No, in some cases it's stoicism.
Oh, I have a job. I won't be paid. I'm paid by the hour.
Right.
And if I don't go to work.
That's a valid concern.
Yeah. And I have 3 kids. And I have, all these things. And so class and race become factors. Stage 4, you find it, you die.
Right.
And we know this. We ought to do something about it. So swimming, and this is us making a pledge. This is going to be the first health disparity in the nation that is eliminated. 10, 11 years from now, African Americans in Rhode Island will swim at the same rates as white folks in Rhode Island. And then, so this is a model for the nation. Other people can duplicate it. But I'm hoping the folks doing stroke and heart and diabetes can see you take a population and you address their problem and they become part of the norm.
Well, there's a clear model for that, and that's in the national mobilization that took place in addressing HIV. There you had what was early on misdiagnosed, really, as a disease symbolic of one community.
Yes.
Later on, as we grew emotionally, we grew it to understand that worldwide it was a disease that crossed all sorts of boundaries, sexual, religious, sexuality. But there was a national driving concern that this had to be dealt with now, that the results were imminent and tragic.
But let me mildly disagree.
Mm-hmm.
It's about time we disagree.
Okay.
I didn't say tuberculosis. I can name you 5 diseases. Matter of fact, science in America, health science, is unbelievable. Just think about the longevity that we've achieved in life in spite of certain things the American population is doing. So we are able to conquer some health problems. I can name you 10, in the last 100 years. So we're able. But I've never seen where minorities are more affected that the problem is dealt with for them. So I know this sounds like splitting hairs. It's not. If smallpox goes away, nobody has it.
Right.
But black women, Latino women, should not be dying at 3 and 4 times the rate as white women for breast cancer.
Right, because that statistic says something very specific.
It's neglect.
There's something we need to look at.
Well,
the same with type 2 diabetes.
Yes.
The same with
right.
pretty much any of those environmental illnesses.
Well, to my point, I was focused more on the political reaction from I'll loosely call it a minority community, the gay rights movement, all right, in reaction to a health concern. Stretching back to our last conversation, I get back to the seeming lack of outrage that a situation like any of the ones you described could exist. I from a personal perspective, my mother was one of the first in the country, she's passed on now, who was an RN, who actually set up 30 plus years ago patient training for diabetes and specialized actually in the inner city because that's where the hospital she worked was. And it was apparent then just the poor health reaction of the system to African Americans. So my concern is across the board, how do we harness the outrage that people like ACT UP that we're so capable of in the 80s and 90s over the AIDS?
Now you're going to make me say something else you're going to find disagreeable. We've got to give Nancy Reagan and Ronald Reagan a little credit because Rock Hudson, their friend,
right,
became ill and eventually died. And they realized what it was like. And, of course, there had been total resistance from conservative, right-wing Republican types until the Reagans saw it up close and personal. And the federal government changed its stance. Now, you have Teddy Kennedy pushing very hard, on the liberal left, mainly for the gay community. This is a political change brought about by lots of people. Again, people get upset with me. I give George Bush Jr. unbelievable credit for the work he did on AIDS in Africa. Unbelievable.
We had that conversation on the show 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, he deserves that.
And so sometimes illness can cross lines that you would not expect.
Well,
And then again, we've got to be careful because I love allies. Anybody comes to the table and does good work, you should praise them. Hold your nose and praise them.
We've often seen, even in recent times, people's minds change when something hits close to home. When they have a friend who turns out to be HIV positive, it causes them to think differently. There was it Rob Portman, whose son came out?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and he goes from anti to
at that point
proud.
he stopped. Was the reflexive.
But that's
negativity.
why gay rights and gay marriage and gay everything's moving so quickly. I think before, go back 20, 30 years, it didn't move quickly because everybody was hiding. And then you have folks not hiding as much, and the father, mother, whatever, and they're in power.
Right.
So this is different than race. Most white folks don't have a black
Right. I was going to ask you
sister
that.
sitting in the back room, and now
Right.
we've gone to almost 3% interracial families. So we do have some, but I think most of the movement on gay rights is it's somebody's son or daughter.
Yes, and that actually is an interesting point. How do we?
I'm in favor of it, by the way.
Yeah, I'm
Not discriminating against your son and daughter.
No, we're...
So, but how do we, as a community, in the larger sense, adopt family members of other ethnic groups so that these things become more personal?
Now I'm going to
How do
say
we-
this,
how do we
and then
reach out?
I don't want
We
to
wanna-
overdo the mic here. So, I really believe this, and this is what I said earlier. Everybody of goodwill needs to do more. And in the prior decades, I used to tell people, you go to work. In the secretarial pool, 17 white women in a city 50% black and brown. They're practicing discrimination.
Of course.
Now, you don't want to get fired over it, but can't you just say, "Oh, I saw that black woman come in and interview." And be as subtle as possible. The person doing the bad thinks you're on their side, or that you don't care. And everybody needs to speak up every day, all the time. And I used to do a whole lot of work on negotiations and the like. And sometimes, when you get ready to say something to your boss, you lean back and pretend you're not saying it, and you lower your voice, and you do everything you need to do not to create a fight. But we all need to speak up all the time.
Yeah.
Well, now, to the funding issue. Clearly this is going to be a mobilization. What I first thought of when you started talking about, the eradication of certain issues, I thought of polio. I thought of, you almost have to approach this, I would think, in that same frame of mind.
Yeah.
So how do you move forward to the next step?
Right. Well, I mean, as we stated before, this really is going to be a massive effort, which will require, an entire state of people to get behind us to some extent. We're seeking to change a culture which isn't simply applying some sort of preventative measure, but to truly reverse a long history in which people have been continually denied access. But access and opening up swimming pools and giving free lessons isn't going to be the solution. We need to do a major outreach campaign to not only get our support within the African American community, but to get support with funders, with grant institutions that will be the providers of the necessary resources to make this kind of effort possible in the first place. And, we mentioned before the problem of getting people to see beyond themselves. Maybe it's a problem of empathy. Maybe it's something more. But, our hope is to make this issue present to those who might not be a part of that, who might not be within a community where they have a family member or they know someone who have drowned and they have a kind of personal attachment and an understanding of why swimming is truly a necessary life skill that, tragically affects so many people. So it's our hope to really branch out outside of just one community and get everyone aware of this problem on a deeper level.
Absolutely.
Now, the funding for this needs to be pretty significant. We jousted back and forth on this a little bit as we spoke during the week and running up to this. The Rhode Island Foundation was the recipient of a major grant by Blue Cross Blue Shield of about $20 million. So it's been my position all along that we need to closely examine what ratepayers' money is essentially funding. A lot of that money has been spent well. Some of it's gone to Latino Public Radio and a few other interesting causes. Is it fair to say, can we call on, can the coalition with all its marketing might here, call on the good folks at the Rhode Island Foundation to open their purses?
And guess what? We went to meet with Neil Steinberg, the chair, and he basically told us no. And I went away thinking, I got to know here. Now we got to go to Kresge. We got to go, we got 30 other places to go. But I've just sat here and I'm listening to you again, and you're right, and I'm wrong. We need a little militancy. And he could give us 2 days' interest on that money, and it would be enough to get through the year. We need $100,000 in the next year, and then we need $400,000 a year. Mm-hmm. Now, as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. used to say, within the sound of my voice, there's someone very rich who could solve this problem by taking out a checkbook on their own. Failing that, there are a whole bunch of people in the Kiwanis who can write $2,000 checks. Mm-hmm. And so we're thrilled to be here because, now we've been getting, a prominent Republican gave us $500. He may be our biggest individual donor.
Right.
We've been getting a whole lot of $5 checks, and we got beautiful bumper stickers. That's what we did with those $5 checks. So I think you've just done something militant, and that is you gave me a little push, and I go back to the Rhode Island Foundation, and I'm not going to take a no that easily. I don't normally take no's that easily.
There is a subcurrent of wealth left in this community. It's time to reinvest in this community. I'm as negative as anyone about the prospects of Rhode Island going forward. But
that's an understatement.
But these are our family. These are our children. These are people we go to church with. And certainly, if we've got the ability to solve the problem from within, we need to do it, and we need to do it damn soon.
Thank you.
Now, I have a quick question for Dylan. You've been conducting research on the subject of swimming in the inner city. What's the most surprising finding you've come across?
So we spoke earlier about access. I think, the culture we're speaking about is one of an entrenched kind of psychological response to swimming, which I think has kind of ingrained itself in so many youth and certainly those of the older generation. So it might not be simply a problem of opening up pools, but trying to give young black youth to lessen, a very real fear of going in the water, to, introduce people in a way that is comfortable, that is culturally sensitive to their needs. If we really want to get into some of the details of, very specific reasons why some people might not be swimming, one thing we did discover was African American women not wanting to go into the water due to their hair. And, that in particular is a fascinating, very strong cultural thing in the community.
Can I join you in that we believe
Please.
This is the number one reason for most African American women? And then their number one reason with their children is fear.
Right.
And so you wouldn't even dream this up. So we need a $40,000 a year coordinator to get African American women to come to swim, who's probably African American, and walks up to them and say, I can swim, you should too.
Right.
And this, Dylan, what you're talking about is the complexity of this problem. This is not go get a flu shot.
Right.
Which is also a problem, by the way.
Yeah, but this isn't, if we build it, they will come.
If you
we
go and get them, we're going to Reverend Vaughn's church, St. James, in Woonsocket, the last Sunday of the month, to talk to 225 African-American people. It's a statewide project, and we're going to talk to them face to face and get pledges.
Yes.
With the cultural issues, too, unfortunately, you're going to have to ask people, just like with education, to go against their elders, which is always tough because you have a certain age group who says, well, I wasn't that good of a student, so Junior doesn't have to be that good of a student. And, I didn't swim, so Junior doesn't have to swim.
That's right.
Oh, no. I think that's, I'm going to be disagreeable one more time real quick.
We like it when you disagree with
I
us.
think that's not true. I think everybody's the worse student you are, the more you want your child to go to Harvard. So I don't think that's true. I think the studies show that. Swimming is uniquely different. Black people are terrorized in their minds about drowning.